Hey everybody, our preschool lesson for this week of February the 9th comes from 1 Samuel chapter 1. And it is the story of when Hannah prayed for a son and how God answered that prayer. So remember our big unit verse, kind of the big main idea that connects all these stories together, is from Deuteronomy 6:5, which says, "Love the Lord your God with all of your heart." And so that is kind of our big overarching verse. But this specific verse for this week comes from Psalm 66:19. And kind of the preschool version of that says, "God hears me when I pray." But I want to read this full verse to you out of the ESV, which is what this translation is. And it's Psalm 66:19. Let me flip over there for you. This is what it says. "But truly, God has listened. He has attended to the voice of my prayer." And so it's not only that God can hear us, but it's that God acts and moves on our behalf. And so that is kind of our big point to this story of Hannah. And so Hannah is married to a man named Elkanah, and they are unable to have children. Hannah can't get pregnant. And so he has another wife, and she does get pregnant. And whenever you start to read in 1 Samuel chapter 1, you see how the second wife is just horrible to Hannah. And Hannah endures so much in this time of waiting on God. And so they go up to the temple to offer their sacrifice. And while they're there, Hannah is praying. And she is just pouring her heart out before the Lord. And it says that she is praying so hard that her mouth is moving, but no sound is coming out. And so Eli, who's the high priest at this time, is watching her, and he thinks that she's drunk. And so he goes to confront her, and she says, "No, I'm not. I am just desperately crying out to the Lord." And so in verse 17 of chapter 1, he kind of tells her, "Go ahead and just go," and it kind of offers her a type of blessing and says, "May God grant what you're asking for, because you are asking so wholeheartedly." And so they go home, and lo and behold, she's pregnant. And Hannah had promised the Lord that if he were to give her a child, a son, that she would give him back to the Lord. And so as soon as Samuel is weaned, so we're talking like a little boy, little boy, she takes him back to the temple to be raised by Eli in the ways of how to serve and minister to the Lord. Now, if you'll remember, Eli and his sons were horrible. His sons were terrible. They were taking advantage in all sorts of different ways, doing all sorts of different stuff. And Eli was not doing anything to stop them. So she takes him there, and every year she would go back and visit him and bring him a new coat, a new cloak. And then they go on to have more children. But, Samuel, there is not really another person in Scripture who is like Samuel. He carries such an incredible weight on him, and really grows up to be an incredible man. He is, a political leader. He is a religious leader. He is a prophet. He kind of carries all this responsibility. But he starts off as a little boy. And really in chapter 2, we see his mother's heart and how she prays and the blessing that she prays over him, and how you can see her dedication and faithfulness to the Lord in that. And then, of course, you can read on in chapter 3 of how the Lord actually calls Samuel and kind of begins that one-on-one relationship with him, which is an incredible story. But the main focus of our lesson time with our preschoolers is that God hears us whenever we call out to him, and that he cares about the things that we care about. So there are a couple of ways that you can kind of make the story connect with your kiddos. One is you could mouth words like, and see if they can understand what you're saying, like lip reading, just like how Hannah was moving her mouth with no sound. There is also an idea of a prayer chain, and so if you want to do that, that is a great also fine motor skill for the kids. So you start off with a ring, and you glue it together. Use a glue stick, strips of paper, and they glue it in a circle. And then they take another one and they have to loop it through and glue that one together. And then they take another one and have to loop it through and glue that together. You could do them in patterns. You could just have them see how long of a chain they could make. Or you could do it with paper clips. And as they think of a prayer to say to God, they hook a paper clip on, which is another fine motor skill that's great for our preschoolers. And see who can make the longest chain, and talk about how it doesn't matter if we have one prayer or 100 prayers. God hears them all, and God cares about those things that we care about. There's also a musical chairs game, which is a little bit different than we typically play musical chairs. So the instructions are in here, and basically there's a chair for every kid. And then you put a Bible in one chair that has a marker with the verse, Psalm 66:19, that God hears our prayers and that God acts on those prayers. And so when you play the music, and then when they stop, whoever's sitting in the chair with the Bible opens it up, and you help them read it, which basically you read it and they repeat at this level. And then put the marker back in, close it up, and then do it again. You also have screens in your classrooms, and we're working on getting all the wiring and everything ready for them so that you can, for extended care, they can stream those in. But you will be able soon to be able to have some additional music resources in your classroom during that time. So it's coming. Just be patient. We're working on it really hard. So another thing that you can do is you can practice taking care of babies, and how Hannah loved her son very much, and she took care of him when he was a baby, and then she sent him to minister and be trained at the temple. So there's lots of different ways. There's also a mix and match game that comes in your curriculum if you want to get that out. So you've got several different options. You won't be able to do all of those. So, but you could pick and choose and see what your kids enjoy. So I love the story of Hannah, and she inspires me to pray harder and to be more open and more sincere with the Lord. And I pray that this story does that for you as well. Thank you so much for all that you do for our kiddos, and the ways that you love the smallest members of our church, and what a blessing that is. So I look forward to Sunday, and I hope that your time of study over this lesson is a real blessing to you this week.